作戦エリアへの到着を確認しました。
準備よしですね。
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Briareas Kerensky and welcome to the updated review of Macross Delta Scramble. I've decided to do a second version of this review to include the free DLC that BandaiNamco made available a month or so after the game's release. I won't be covering any paid DLC. Macross Delta Scramble is a PlayStation Vita game by Artdink based on the anime series of the same name. I'm not the biggest Macross fan. In fact, I only truly like Macross Plus, but given Artdink's pedigree, I got into Delta Scramble with hopes of mindless, if not downright good, fun. And I've got exactly what I was expecting, but Macross Delta Scramble has its fair share of problems that really put a dent into its overall quality. Macross Delta Scramble puts you into the flight suite of a UN Spacey or Windermere pilot. You can choose between two portraits for your alter ego, a name and, in case of the UN, the sex. Once this formality has been taken care of, you're thrown into two different campaigns that follow the story of the show, where you essentially do the same things the main characters did, like shooting down Messer in Ayate's first trial or fending off assaults to Valkyrie by the Sky Knights. The same goes for the Windermere campaign, and I'm not particularly fond of this structure. I feel that impersonating a character from the series, or at the very least, not being a random guy in every engagement, would have been more immersive. This feeling is compounded by how easy the game is, or at least how uneventful encounters with enemy aces are. Aces piloting standard machines lead enemy waves, the only differences from standard opposition being how much they dodge and their health. Characters from Macross Delta appear when the story dictates, and once again health and dodging are the only differences. Giving named characters different strengths and weaknesses, like a favorite weapon, Valkyrie mode, or an unique maneuver would have gone a long way in making these encounters more enjoyable and challenging, especially in story mode, where everyone has brain fart moments where they stop dead in their tracks, leaving huge openings to unload all your Valkyrie's arsenal onto them. The game actually becomes easier as you progress. Your character gains more experience, thus improving his or her own stats. Better performing Valkyries are unlocked and further enhanced the more you fight on them. The Windermerian campaign is particularly guilty of this, as the standard Draken is an already high-performance machine that only gets better mission after mission, while you start with a YF-171 Nightmare in the UN campaign, and it takes some missions before the baseline VF-31 becomes available. The UN campaign allows for more hardware variety, as you can pilot VF-1s, Glaugs, Cheyennes, along VF-171s and VF-31s variants, while Windermerians are limited to the Draken and an handful of variants. The DLC changes this. Missions are harder to complete and it's even harder to get good grades, though I found them a bit too hard. I was able to complete the UN campaign by spamming Kaname's support action during the last two missions, and right now I'm still trying to complete the Windermerian campaign in the DLC. Variety is a huge problem in Delta Scramble, from the few environments through the waves of enemies that behave the same way no matter who they are, to mission objectives. The most elaborate missions will ask you to defend battleships or hunt down enemies before they leave the area, but everything boils down on destroying all enemy waves. I get that the game is limited by what the series has shown, but so much more could have been done even within this constraint, first by reducing the number of missions per campaign, and then making them longer and with more varied objectives. The quick nature of most missions fits well a portable system like the Vita, but only few missions stand above the rest thanks to somewhat complex objectives or because they show something from the anime series. And I'm not talking about the cut-ins with snippets from the show, I'm talking about the few precious moments, one I think, where the game recreates them with its graphics. In fact, the production values of Macross Delta Scramble seem fairly low. I often joke that BandaiNamco tried their best to maximize profits with the stupidest of cuts, but Delta Scramble is a prime example of this. The story progresses through a series of badly compressed screenshots from the anime with a static text over. There are only a handful of voiceovers for story screens and briefings themselves always use the same graphics. Missions always start and end in the same way, and named characters just fly in with the same introduction. The Windermere campaign simply goes to the credit roll after the last mission ends. The UN story ends with a black screen and quotes from the show. The DLC tries to correct this with more anime screenshots before and after missions, but there are only 4 UN and 3 Windermere missions covering the second half of the anime series. The last mission for both factions is the same, only with different dialogues from the characters. And again, you are thrown to the credit roll after clearing it. I commend BandaiNamco for providing this as a free DLC, but it feels more like something thrown together at the last minute during the original development phase and left out from the original release for some reason. Even bad games like Gersum Panzer and UUU had plenty of hooks for their fans, and I doubt the income from Macross isn't high enough to justify a bit more effort.
作戦内容を確認してください。各機発進願います。
貴様と一緒とは俺の運も尽きたか。
せえガルド、邪魔だけはすんなよ。
作戦開始。任務に集中してください。
But where the main campaign fails, extra missions come to the rescue across almost the whole spectrum. Extra missions unlock characters and machines from almost every Macross series and video games. During extra missions, named characters have their own introduction, unique spoken lines, and are often much more challenging than in story missions. The main features are still dodges and health, but they are a notch above everything that the original campaign throws at you. Extra missions are Macross Delta Scramble at its best, with fast dogfights where you need to maximize weapon efficiency and piloting skills across all available Valkyrie modes, and the campaign should have had the same care that was put into these completely unrelated missions. Once all missions have been cleared with an S rank or higher, you can use extra characters and machines in the story campaigns.
そこまで来ているというの。
Macross Delta Scramble, however, clearly shows that Arting know how to make a game feel good, starting from the controls. All 3 Valkyrie modes, Fighter, Gearwork and Batroid, are easy to handle and have a common control setup despite their different abilities, though I found myself ignoring Battleroid mode except for losing altitude instead of double tapping X and consuming the boost gauge. Every machine has its own special attack that changes between variants and loadouts. It's also possible to assign up to 5 support characters to gain a series of bonuses and unleash special abilities with various effects. These abilities can go completely overlooked during the normal campaign, but become a necessity in the DLC missions, to the point of being the only way to clear missions. The DLC missions also like to put players against battleships, which highlights the shortcomings of the targeting system. Locking onto the body of a ship rather than one of its weapons requires a lot of cycling through targets, and sometimes the reticle can jump to something else completely. Machines, once unlocked, must be purchased from the game's shop with credits gathered completing missions. Credits are shared between UN, Windermere and extra missions. Every vehicle in the game can be improved by spending TPs, which are exclusive to the vehicle used. Vehicles can support up to a number of improvements that normally allows to bring every spec up to their theoretical limit. However, it's possible to push parameters beyond that by sacrificing others. Improvements can be reverted and changed at any time, and you can buy more TPs with leftover credits to make transitions between airframes less demanding.
あなたの活躍楽しみにしてるわ。
The game runs at a good and constant pace, even with fairly complex stages with lots of buildings or reflecting water. Large explosions do tax the hardware, but luckily these moments are rare. Valkyries are well modeled, with independent control surfaces in fighter mode, swinging blast doors for missile launchers and vectoring nozzles, but with minimal animations in Gearwalk and Battle Droid. At high altitude everything looks good, but every texture gets muddy once close. This applies to the most complex vehicle textures as well, like the VF-31s dedicated to Valkyrie. Some environments are criminally small, and those that aren't tend to be non-descriptive stages like space or asteroid fields. Everywhere stage limits appear almost instantly and can be pretty annoying when battling close to them. Of course, there are songs from all over the Macross universe, and the game allows to choose different BGMs and even songs triggered by the special action. There are numerous voice clips, although I don't think every single character got his or her own original actor.
命を捨てるわけにはいかんな。
捕らえました。
Macross Delta Scramble is by no means a bad game, but its potential surely feels underused. It's a fun, yet mindless game that makes a decent use of the Macross Delta name, but ironically enough, it makes a better use of every other Macross show and video game. Maybe the extra content comes from previous Arctic Macross games, but even if they do, they are still a notch above the Delta campaign. The box game cuts off abruptly in the middle of the anime series, with the free DLC covering the second half with just a handful of missions. These extra missions feel more like they were intended for a more complete package, but then released in wake of poor sales in order to save development costs. To conclude, the groundwork is there and it's very much enjoyable, but everything else is just average. I hope you have enjoyed this review and you'll stick around for more. Briareo Skerensky, over and out.
青い星。
絶対戻ってくるからな。
貴様さえいなければ